Welcome to the world of Carry On. In this series, we're going to take a look behind the scenes at how some of the greatest Carry On films were ever made. In this episode, we look back at the 14th Carry On film, Follow That Camel. But just who is signed up to join the Legion? Phil Silvers as Sergeant Ernie Knocker. Jim Dowell as Bertrand Ollivant West. Peter Butterworth as Simpson. Kenneth Williams as Commandant Maximilian Berger. Charles Hawtrey as Captain Lapice. Joan Sims as Zig Zig. Angela Douglas as Lady Jane Ponsonby. Bernard Breslau as Sheikh Abdul Bulbul. And Anita Harris as Cork Tip. Carry On Follow That Camel started life off like most carry-ons do, with Sid James being embarked for the lead role as the Foreign Legion Sergeant. However, with a commitment to the ITV series, George and the Dragon, Sid's part was to be recast. In doing so, the producer Peter Rogers saw a gap in the carry-on market, particularly the American market. Talbot Rothwell, the writer, already had in mind that this whole persona of this fast-talking Legionnaire Sergeant could very well be Phil Silvers, and he couldn't get the idea out of his mind. This prompted Peter Rogers to actually take the idea of putting Bilko into the Foreign Legion. The first that Kenneth Williams knew about this development was on the 17th of April of '67, when a costume fit-in at Burnham's when he met Peter Butterworth, and he said that he told me Sid James is out, and they're having Phil Silvers in the lead. Sid unfortunately suffered a heart attack on the 13th of May '67, less than 2 weeks before the filming schedule. So Sid was definitely out. However, the inclusion of American star was an exciting time for the Carry On films because they'd never done it before. Even though Phil Silvers' career was already on a very steep decline because his success had come a decade earlier, this didn't seem to faze anyone, including the distributor Rank, who were more than happy to take Phil Silvers on in a film. They also thought that there was going to be a big American distribution deal with Paramount. Unfortunately, this wasn't the case, such as other rumours lying around that Woody Allen was also going to be the main role, as his career was already just starting to pop up. However, it was merely a myth. However, although Rank and of course Peter Rogers were not still quite prepared to embrace the Carry On title on their films, such as they did with Don't Lose Your Head the year before, they were still heavily marketing on the emphasis that it had the familiar Carry On cast and the crew were back together. Indeed, Talbot Rothwell's first draft of the script is titled Carry On Bo. Even in America, it was released as Carry On in the Legion, so it had all the familiar sounds and essence of being a Carry On. Having an American artist, though, on set meant he had to get paid a lot more than the other cast members and provoked animosity among many of the regular Carry On team members. Silvers also could not or would not learn his lines, so boards were placed in front of the camera so he could read them as shooting was taking place. It is also rumoured that Phil Silvers lost his contact lenses on many occasions, leaving them searching for him in the sand, and halted filming on several occasions. It was a traditional Carry On cock-up, and it was something that the Carry On team never fared to go to again until the inclusion of Elkie Summer in Carry On Behind. Singer Anita Harris made her Carry On debut as the exotic belly dancer called Tip. Talbot Rothwell's love of film references with innuendo-drenched scripts were reflected in the character name. The 1936 Foreign Legion adventure Under Two Flags had cast Claudette Colbert as Cigarette. The hot burning suns of the Sahara setting was recreated completely by erecting a fort at Camber Sands and Rye on the Sussex coast. The location filming proved to be the longest period in the Carry On team's history, spending 3 weeks on location before returning to their spiritual home of Pinewood Studios. So with much trials and tribulations on the Sussex dunes, what was Carry On Follow That Camel all about? Let's find out. The film starts with Captain Bagshaw accidentally tripping over to disgrace Bertrand Ollivant West in a classic cricket match. This is all to win the hand of the Lady Jane Ponsonby, which Bo obviously loves very dearly. Unfortunately, he doesn't get the lady and decides to join the French Foreign Legion. They try to enlist and go to a local bar where they're not aware that Sergeant Knocker is kipping in the back. However, they get told to go and sign on. Meanwhile, Lady Jane has learnt of Beau's recent departure to the French Foreign Legion and decides to make her travels to go and find him to clear his name. Once Lady Jane finds her way there, she is directed to the Café Zig Zig, where she is scooped up by Sheikh Abdul Bulbul as he plans to have her as his 13th wife. Knocker and Beau are also kidnapped by Abdul and taken to the Oasis El Nuki. Whilst there, Beau discovers Lady Jane in his harem. Knocker manages to escape and get word to the French Foreign Legion and subsequently make their way to defeat the enemy. However, on their way they discover Beau and Simpson staked to the ground at the abandoned Oasis. After learning about Abdul's celebration of successful attacks, Lady Jane, Beau, Berger, Knocker and Simpson rescue her from his tent, leaving Simpson behind dressed as a decoy. When this is discovered that he is nothing more than, well, Simpson, war is declared and an attack on Fort Swazinearth enrages. The next day we see gum arabic, coconuts, gunpowder and cricket bats all holding up the garrison. With a successful win, back in England the group reunites for a game of cricket. Life seems okay as Knocker appears to be Commandant and Lady Jane has a son to that of the late Commandant Berger. Meanwhile, just a little bit more cricket. As a ball is thrown, it explodes, but Sheikh Abdul Bulbul is having his revenge again, which basically leaves Beau in a worse off state with a broken back and burnt clothes. Of course, the natural response is not out. Carry On Follow That Camel was filmed between the 1st of May and the 23rd of June 1967 and opened at cinemas on the 14th of December of the same year. So what do we think about Carry On Follow That Camel? Well, this film isn't regarded as being a classic by a lot of the fans. This is the rainy day afternoon film where most fans would probably put it towards the bottom of their list rather than near the top. Why is that? Well, could it be that originally the Carry On title was on it and it didn't have the sort of publicity or the feel of a Carry On film? Or was it the fact that Phil Silvers just didn't fit into the series? Now, I would go with the latter, because even though Phil Silvers is a great actor, by this time his career was at an all-time low, and to try and revive his career and break the American market with the Carry On films, this was proving to be a bit of a struggle, and it at times does get very hard to watch. It is very much like watching a Phil Silvers show, but just on the big screen. And as the poster does rightly say, Bilko joins the Carry On Legion. But let's not blame film for everything. Even though this film doesn't actually kind of feel Carry On-y most of the time, if this film was made just as Follow That Camel as it was intended in its day, most Carry On fans probably would have seen this film or bought it because it's just like one of those other films they made during the early 60s, such as Raising the Wind or The Big Job. You would have seen it. So regardless of what it is, you would have treated it with that kind of same respect. So overall, Carry On Follow That Camel, well, it's one of those films that you might watch if you're sitting in on a Sunday afternoon and you're a bit bored and it might just happen to be lying around. This probably wouldn't be the first choice on a rainy afternoon. However, it does have its merits and it does have some very funny moments, like Mustafa Leak, which has been a classic Carry On line for decades. Until next time, watchers, don't forget to carry on laughing.